Pope Francis is dead, and it's a shame they're going to find somebody to replace him. Not because Francis was a good man, but because nobody should be Pope.
The man is Heinrich Kramer, and he is writing the most blood-soaked book of the 15th century, the Malleus Maleficarum, the Witch's Hammer, a book that would torment the world for a century after its release, and be responsible for the torture and death of 70,000 innocent people.
Treating of three necessary concomitants of witchcraft, which are the devil, a witch, and the permission of Almighty God.
He goes on to say that female empowerment would bring on the apocalypse. He even made the title of the book Female, to hammer home his point. Malleus Maleficarum is a hammer used only on women.
So, we must find the mark. We must find the mark.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress Squalitude, located not far from the Redneck Mecca. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Lord Nibbler, you may have heard him yowling. He's around here. Professor Fuzznuts is in my room. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cats. Get over it. And this is a Hexenhammer episode where Skullbeard and I read more from the medieval witch hunting manual. Next episode will be a news show episode. Now, apologies for the delay in getting this episode out, but we did inventory this week, and I had to switch my sleep schedule around because I had to go to days, and I did it the wrong way. Instead of staying up, I went to bed early and tried to get up early, which that's not how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to stay up late, and I don't know why I did it that way, but I did, and it threw me all off. And the fun thing was, this was just so brilliant about them doing the inventory, it was 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, and we finished Monday, and as we're leaving, they say, okay, we're ahead of schedule, so some of you aren't going to have to come in on Tuesday. I was one of the people who was told you didn't have to come in. So I didn't. I spent that day taking care of things around the house, like planting things, and other stuff that needed to be done. Then when I got to work today, they said, oh, where were you yesterday? I said, I was told I had the day off. And they're like, oh well. I asked them, was it going to be held against me? Would I get a point for that? And they're like, oh no, don't worry about it. And they're going to let me use a vacation day, so I won't miss out on the pay. But that was annoying. As for other goings on around here, there was a shooting in the neighborhood, not the trailer park, but it was just down the street on Easter Sunday. And I was coming home from going to the store when I started being passed by police cars with their lights on. I was like, something must be happening. And I didn't pay too much attention to it at first because, I figured there was a sale at Krispy Kreme or whatever. It was, nothing happens in this town, so any little chance for the police to have some activity, well, they're going to take it. Then I started seeing more and more police cars go past me with their lights on. And they were all headed in the same direction as I was. So I found that a little concerning. And I get to the entrance of the trailer park, and I see just up the road all these cop cars with their lights on and they're parked. And I do a quick count. There's a dozen of them or so. Maybe as many as 14, which has got to be pretty much the entire police force for the town. And I'm like, nah, I'm just going to go home and not investigate that because I don't want to know, really. And then, so as I'm pulling in to the trailer park, I see this guy I kind of know, and he's standing there holding his phone, and he's looking in the direction of where all the cops are. And since I kind of knew him, I was like, I wonder what's going. I asked him if he had any idea, and he's like, oh yeah, I got an app on my phone that has a police scanner. There's been a shooting, and turns out 2 people got shot. A woman got shot in the arm, and then some young kid who's in his early 20s got shot in the chest. I have to point out, there was no sign of an ambulance. And the ambulances would have come from the same direction that all the police cars that passed me were coming from. So I would have seen them had they shown up at that point in time. And dude didn't have any more information than that. But sort of giving me the vibe of this country's going to hell in a handbasket. I can't believe all this shit. And he's like looking suspiciously at people walking around in the trailer park. It's like they're people. They live here. They're going to the gas station at the entrance, or they're going to see what's happening down the road. It's understandable. Of course, he was suspicious of them, and he was eyeing them. And well, who's that? Where are they going? Where are they going? Oh, they're going over to the store. I guess they were okay. So, and then the news sites, a day or so later, had a story. Family was having an Easter party, and then for some reason, somebody who was at the party opened fire. He shot a guy in the chest, and then he shot his mother in the arm. And he was arrested, and the person where the party was being held was also arrested because the cops found drug paraphernalia, supposedly. They found they claimed to have found a bong, and they found enough to charge somebody with simple possession, which means the guy who owned the house had, a small amount of marijuana on him. By the way, the guy who owned the house was in his 60s. And the article made a big deal about how, he'd had frequent run-ins with the law over the years, blah, blah, blah. Dude was black. You can't be black in this town and not have frequent run-ins with the law, no matter what you do. Because racism. I will never forget. I was going somewhere, and I saw a cop. He had this elderly black man pulled over and was patting that black man down. That elderly black man could not have weighed more than 100 pounds. He was just this frail old guy, and the cop's patting him down. Why is he patting him down? Because the guy was black. That was it. Didn't matter the fact that the guy was 100 pounds and you could push him over with one finger. He was black, so obviously he was a threat to the community. Blah blah blah. But hey, that's life in America. And I am I know I said it in the opening sting. I'm going to say it again. Don't say that Pope Francis was a good man. He was not. And he wasn't even really an improvement over previous popes because he didn't move the needle as far as the church was concerned. He would come out and say something that sounded kind of nice, and then the church would correct it and say, no, he didn't really mean what you think he meant. He meant this other thing. And there should not be a church at all. We have to stop thinking of religion as being something that is kind of harmless. It isn't. It is harmful. It is deliberately harmful to our society. And I know there are people out there who will make the case that, hey, it has these elements. They provided a useful function for our social evolution in times past. I have some issues with that, but even if you're right about that, those structures and things that it once provided are not necessary. They may be necessary, but they are better done by non-religious organizations than they are by religious organizations. There has been at least one study that said, hey, if you're religious, you're more likely to believe in things that aren't true outside of religion. You're more likely to fall for conspiracy theories, or you're more likely to glom onto things without evidence. The people who think that extremism is a bug of religion are wrong. Extremism is a feature of religion, not a bug. Voltaire rather famously said that those who can make you believe absurdities can get you to commit atrocities. He was close in that. In reality, it's they make you believe absurdities so that you will commit atrocities. I would love to sit here and just rant about why we shouldn't mourn his death, and why people are wrong for saying that he was one of the good ones. And this is true regardless if he's replaced by somebody who's as big a fascist as Mel fucking Gibson, who thinks the church has been wrong since the 1960s after the second whatever thingy where, they said, oh, hey, anti-Semitism is wrong. But I just don't have the time right now. But anybody who is saying, well, Francis was one of the good ones, you're not thinking clearly about this. You wouldn't say of a slave owner, he was one of the good ones because he didn't beat his slaves all that much, just occasionally when they really deserved it. You recognize that the position of slave owner is wrong, and it doesn't matter how good or how well that owner treated his slaves, he never should be in that position. Same is true with Pope. The same is true with religious leaders. Period, paragraph. And until we recognize that, we're not going to see an end to genocides on this planet. I mean, even after everybody gives up religion, there still may be genocides, but they'll be harder and harder to do once religion is fully gone. But while religion's around, we can be certain genocides will be around. After we get rid of religion, we can get rid of genocides. But you can't have religion and not have genocides. That's kind of religion's thing. And we need to remember that. Why do Muslims, Christians, and Jews all fight over Israel? Because their God tells them the land belongs to them. And once you throw God out of the equation, then you kind of have to change things. I mean, the Israelis and the Palestinians still have issues, but Christians, not so much. Because they stop existing. It doesn't matter. Nobody is fighting over this or that temple in Greece because Zeus hung out there, or Athena, or whomever. They don't go to war over it. Perhaps they want to preserve the temple out of respect for, the historicity of the temple, but they're not going to lay down their lives for it, like somebody who thinks that, it's where their God lives, where their God gave it to them and them alone, and anybody who isn't like them who tries to go there is sullying the temple. No. All right. So, anyways, here's Skullbeard and I reading more from Hexenhammer. I will just say it's not terrible, but it's not anything really remarkably entertaining about it either, which is an improvement over, the early sections of the book where it was just absolutely horrific.
So you ready?
As ready as I'll never be. Part 2, Question 2, Chapter 8. Certain remedies prescribed against those dark and horrid harms with which devils may afflict men. Yet again we reserve our judgment in discussing the remedies against certain injuries to the fruits of the earth, which are caused by cankerworms or by huge flights of locusts and other insects which cover vast areas of land and seem to hide the surface of the ground, eating up everything to the very roots in the vineyards and devouring fields of ripe crops. In the same light, too, we consider the remedies against the stealing of children by the work of devils.
Well, if you walk without rhythm, you won't attract the cankerworms.
Those are sandworms. Yeah.
And have you seen a recent image of Fatboy Slim?
I have not.
Dude. He's looking old. And he can't be that much older than you or I.
Yeah, well, little tangent. Apparently, they trotted out Stephen Harper for a conservative election ad because our election is coming up. Man, he did not age well. He's looking very Palpatine.
And another age-related digression. Tom Waits recently posted a video. Right?
Okay.
Tom Waits is 76 years old.
Yep.
He looks identical to every photo I have seen of my paternal grandfather, dating from when my paternal grandfather was in his 40s.
Oh, wow.
Until he died in his late 70s, early 80s.
Uh-huh.
And my paternal grandfather was somebody who smoked a pack of Marlboro Reds, at least one pack of Marlboro Reds every day for, since he was like 2.
Uh-huh.
And, he was one of these people whose clothing styles were absolutely frozen in the 1950s. The white short sleeve shirt, the thin tie, the flat top, wire rimmed glasses.
Mm-hmm. Man, I wish I could get wire rim glasses.
Zenny I think has them. Zenni. I've thought about getting them myself. The whole Michael Douglas and falling down thing, though, it's a little too close to home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. That's the look, isn't it? Uh-huh. I made the mistake of watching Django Unchained last night. That was a hard fucking watch.
Yeah.
I found it... And right up until blood everywhere. Then it was like, oh yeah, this is a Tarantino movie. But I did have a little bit of trouble with the dialogue. But, what's his name? Walls, with his little wireframe glasses. That's the look that I'm looking for.
Somewhere I have, there are companies that, they specialize in old style glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not terribly expensive either. Because, well, of course, I don't know what glasses cost in your neck of the woods, but because I've always really wanted a pair of the glasses that James Joyce wore.
Not familiar with that, but
just Google a picture of James Joyce and you'll see his glasses. And but yeah, I mean, there's a place in Washington State that is their thing. They restore old glasses frames and will pop in modern lenses.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, I've got their. I'm on their mailing list, and I get emails from them every now and then. But the James Joyce style glasses, I've always liked them. I don't know how I'd look in them, but there was something I was watching, and because I was familiar with James Joyce's glasses, I was like, "Oh, these guys made a mistake," because it was, it was something set in the past, right?
Yep.
And the character had eyeglasses that had, the little pads, like here.
Yeah, that.
Okay.
And every picture I find of him, well, there's one picture with kind of oval lenses, but most of them are a thick black frame, round lenses, no pads, just a nose bridge.
Right. Up until like the 1930s or 40s, I forget which, nobody had nose pads.
Mm-hmm.
They were all that bridge style. And but anyways, this thing I was watching, guy had the nose pads. And I was like,
dude, that's an anachronism. Yeah. And nobody's got the Optigrab. Why is that?
What is the Optigrab?
Oh my god, Steve Martin, the jerk.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He's got the little thing in the middle to hold the glasses up. Yeah.
Yeah. That, god damn, dude, I haven't seen The Jerk since it was on broadcast television in, the 70s?
Uh-huh. I've seen it a few times.
Yeah. All right. But with regard to the former kind of injury, we may quote St. Thomas, the second of the second, question 90, where he asks whether it is lawful to adjure an irrational creature.
Huh?
Yeah, thank you. He answers that it is, but only in the way of compulsion, by which it is sent back to the devil who uses irrational creatures to harm us. That would be everything.
Pretty much. Including your current
There ain't
administration.
No there ain't no Vulcans living on Earth right now, I'll tell you.
Nope.
And such is the method of adjuration in the exorcisms of the church, by which the power of the devil is kept away from irrational creatures. Oh, this is particularly ironic considering Pope Frankie just died after,
JD Vance killed. Now we know the answer to Fuck, Marry, Kill for JD Vance.
Somebody, have you seen that meme that somebody did with the cow?
Uh-huh.
And the Pope?
Yep.
And somebody said no. The Pope met him for 2 seconds and decided he couldn't handle it anymore and killed himself.
Yep.
But if the adjuration is addressed to the irrational creature itself, which understands nothing, then it would be nugatory. It's filled with nougat. And vain. From this, it can be understood that they can be driven off by lawful exorcisms and adjurations. Unlawful exorcisms, however, I don't know. The help of the divine mercy being granted. But first, the people should be bidden to fast and to go in procession and practice other devotions. For this sort of evil is sent on account of adulteries and the multiplication of crimes, wherefore men must be urged to confess their sins. And that paragraph was like 3 sentences.
Yep. And because the next paragraph is only 1 sentence, I'll take 2. Nugatory, by the way, means of no value or importance. In some provinces, Canadian, even solemn excommunications are pronounced, but then they obtain power of adjuration over devils. Another terrible thing which God permits to happen to men is when their own children are taken away from women and strange children are put in their place by devils. And these children, which are commonly called changelings, or in the German tongue, Wechselkinder, are of 3 kinds. For some are always ailing and crying, and yet the milk of 4 women is not enough to satisfy them. Some are generated by the operation of incubus devils, of whom, however, they are not the sons, but of that man from whom the devil has received the semen as a succubus, or whose semen he has collected from some nocturnal pollution in sleep. For these children are sometimes, by divine permission, substituted for the real children. And I have to take a moment here to remind everyone, devil doesn't do shit without God's permission. So, motherfucker is culpable for everything.
And so nocturnal emissions are bad.
Yep.
Because that allows the devil to collect the semen.
Yep.
And if you fuck a succubus, that's bad because he can also collect the semen.
Yep.
So, jerk into a sock.
Yeah, but that's bad too, because reasons.
Yeah.
It's all a bunch of bullshit.
And there is a third kind when the devils at times appear in the form of young children and attach themselves to the nurses, like lampreys or moray. But all three kinds have this in common, that though they are very heavy, they are always ailing and do not grow and cannot receive enough milk to satisfy them, and are often reported to have vanished away.
Okay.
And
So you got a kid that eats too much who just disappears. Obviously a changeling.
or if the kid eats too much and doesn't appear to grow, you need to kill him.
Yeah, but make it look like an accident.
But I mean, I'm wondering if this isn't some kind of
eugenics bullshit? Yes, it is.
Social construct to say, hey, look, if your kid is having certain health problems, it's not your fault, or it's not, disease or anything like that. It's satanic.
Yeah, obviously. These dim motherfuckers. Whatever. And it can be said that the divine pity permits such things for two reasons. First, when the parents dote upon their children too much, and this is a punishment for their own good. Yeah, God is great. Secondly, it is to be presumed that the women to whom such things happen are very superstitious. Obviously. Yeah. I mean, right? How else are you going to pin the blame on the women, right? And are in many other ways seduced by devils. But God is truly jealous, in the right sense of the word, which means a strong love for a man's own wife, which not only does not allow another man to approach her, but like a jealous husband will not suffer the hint or suspicion of adultery, in the same way as God jealous of the soul which he bought with his precious blood and espoused in the faith, and cannot suffer it to be touched by, to converse with, or in any way to approach or have dealings with the devil, the enemy, and adversary of salvation. And if a jealous husband cannot suffer even a hint of adultery, how much more will he be disturbed when adultery is actually committed? Therefore, it is no wonder if his own children are taken away and adulterous children substituted. So, there you go.
And indeed, that it may be more so impressed how God is jealous of the soul. That is a disturbing statement.
Yes, it is.
And will not suffer anything which might cause a suspicion. It is shown in the old law, where he that might drive his people farther from idolatry, he not only forbade idolatry, but also many other things which might give occasion to idolatry and seem to have no use in themselves, although in some marvelous way they retain some use in a mystical sense. For he not only says in Exodus 22, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live on this earth," but he adds this, "She shall not dwell in thy land, lest perchance she cause thee to sin." Similarly, common bawds.
Yep.
That's.
I'm gonna look it up, but I'm gonna guess it's kind of like common body house.
And bulkers are put to death and not allowed to company with men. But I mean,
a bawd is a woman in charge of a brothel. BAWD, not BOD. Well, it depends. If you pay her enough, she could be a madam. She might even step on your balls. If you ask nicely. Note the Note the jealousy of God, who says as follows in Deuteronomy 22, "If thou find a bird's nest made of ticks, if thou find a bird's nest and the dam sitting upon the eggs or upon the young ones, thou shalt not take the dam with the young, but thou shalt let the dam fly away, because the Gentiles use these to procure sterility. The jealous God would not suffer in his people this sign of adultery. In like manner, in our days when old women find a penny, they think it a sign of great fortune, and conversely, when they dream of money, it is an unlucky sign. Also God taught that all vessels should be covered, and that when a vessel had no cover, it should be considered unclean." Ooh, God knows sterile technique? No, the fuck he don't.
But he's kind of getting there.
Well, it's a step on the right path, but still. There ain't no autoclaves in the Bible.
No. There was an erroneous belief that when devils came in the night, or the good people, okay, that's night as in night, not knigget.
Correct.
As old women call them, though they are witches or devils in their forms, they must eat up everything, that afterwards they may bring greater abundance of stores. Some people give color to the story and call them screech owls, but this is against the opinion of the doctors, who say that there are no rational creatures except men and angels, therefore they can only be devils.
I don't think so. Good people. So in Ireland, the fairies are called good people, and traditionally seem to be of a benevolent and capricious and even mischievous disposition. In some parts of Highland Scotland, fairies are called Dáin Sith, or men of peace. I'm just guessing at the pronunciation of that. Men of peace, and it is believed that every year the devil carries off a 10th part of them. It will be readily remembered that to the Greeks the fairies were... not even going to try that. The gracious goddesses.
And I need to point out that there is some kind of demonic figure in the really obscure Old Testament writings, whose name is literally the ancient name for screech owl. And it may in fact be that the discussions that you hear in the Bible, the Old Testament, stuff like that, they're not actually, the people writing it aren't actually thinking they're talking about a demon. They know they're talking about a particular type of owl.
Huh.
And I think that's sort of how Lilith comes into everything, because Lilith actually is derives from a mistranslation that happened in like the 18th or 19th century.
Oh, you froze up.
Unfrozen caveman lawyer now?
You're finally unfrozen. There we go.
Okay.
Everything between 18th and 19th century, but is missing. And I believe it's my turn, and I will take these two because they're small.
Okay.
Again in Leviticus 19, ye shall not round the corners of your heads. I thought it was beards. Neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard, because they did this idolatrously in veneration of idols. Huh. I thought it was just a fashion choice, but what do I know? Again, in Deuteronomy 22, God says that men shall not put on the garments of women, or conversely, because they did this in honor of the goddess Venus, and others in honor of Mars or Priapus. Might give them a Priapism or something.
In which case, if you have it for more than 4 hours, you need to see a doctor.
Yep.
I did I tell you about that time in the early the early 2000s? I was on this message board, and there was this one of the frequent posters was a doctor,
Okay.
and somebody reposted that D.L. Hughley joke about how, if he has an erection lasting more than 4 hours, he's calling a hooker, not his doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor on that board just lost his shit. He's like, "No, you don't understand. Priapism is really serious, and you can have this."
Mm-hmm.
Dude, it's a fucking joke.
Uh-huh. Some people have no sense of humor.
Yeah. That dude was also able to speak the various languages from the Lord of the Rings series fluently.
Oh, okay. So he spoke Elvish and Dwarvish and Orcish and...
Yeah, and he was a former opium addict as well. Yeah. And last I knew, he was a prison doctor.
All right.
Yeah. And for the same reason, he commanded the altars of idols to be destroyed. Hezekiah, I've never fucking heard of, destroyed the brazen serpent when the people wanted to sacrifice to it, saying, "It is brass." I just, all I can think about is when I was a little kid, and in the wintertime, one of the local radio stations would have the brass monkey weather report in the winter. For the same reason, he forbade the observance of visions and auguries, and commanded that the man or woman in whom there was a familiar spirit should be put to death. Such are now called soothsayers. All these things because they give rise to suspicion of spiritual adultery. Therefore, as has been said, from the jealousy which God has for the souls he has espoused, as a husband espouses a wife, they were all forbidden by him.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so we preachers also ought to bear in mind that no sacrifice is more acceptable to God than a jealousy of souls, as St. Jerome says in his commentaries upon Ezekiel. Therefore, in the third part of this work, we shall treat the extermination of witches, which is the ultimate remedy. Oh, is it like a final solution or something? For this is the last recourse of the Church, to which she is bound by divine commandment. For it has been said, "Ye shall not suffer witches to live upon the earth." And with this will be included the remedies against archer wizards, since this kind can only be exterminated by secular law. So, dude's got a bow and arrow, or what? Fireball, fireball.
Lightning bolt, lightning bolt. A remedy when certain persons, for the sake of temporal gain, have devoted themselves entirely to the devil. It has often been found that, though they may be freed from the devil's power by true confession, yet they have been long and grievously tormented, especially in the night, and God allows this for their punishment. But a sign that they have been delivered is that after confession, All the money in their purses or coffers vanishes. Many examples of this could be adduced, but for the sake of brevity, they are passed over and omitted. I'm guessing because it's not really real. But,
Well, obviously, I don't think any of this shit's real.
well, yeah.
Part 3, general and introductory. We're making
My
progress.
head hurts.
Yeah, I know, and I smell toast, but still.
I mean, I'm perfectly fine with sticking a fork in it here because my head is really hurting.
Yeah, this is headache-inducing. What do we got here? I still got an hour and 59 minutes left, which means we've recorded for about an hour.
Yeah.
We can,
it's up to you. I mean,
we can stick a fork in it if you want. I will not object strenuously at all.
Yeah, because I mean, my head's hurting a little bit from this thing.
Yeah, I got the ice pick through the temple sensation going on here myself.
That's it for this episode of the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes. It's also on Stitcher, and most of the episodes are on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter at tparkatheist, and it's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist. You can email me at trailerparkatheist@gmail.com. Show notes can be found at tparkatheist.blogspot.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to donate to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can also support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker.
Say goodnight, Fosnuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.